Akhenaten, known before the 5th year of his reign as Amenhotep IV, sometimes given its Greek form, Amenophis IV, and meaning Amen is satisfied, was a pharaoh of the 18th dynasty of Egypt who ruled for 17 years and died perhaps in 1336 BC or 1334 BC. He is especially noted for abandoning traditional Egyptian polytheism and introducing worship centered on the Aten, which is sometimes described as monotheistic or enotheistic. An early inscription likens the Aten to the sun as compared to stars, and later official language avoids calling the Aten a god, giving the solar deity a status above mere gods. Akhenaten tried to bring about a departure from traditional religion, yet in the end it would not be accepted. After his death, traditional religious practice was gradually restored, and when some dozen years later rulers without clear rights of succession from the 18th dynasty founded a new dynasty, they discredited Akhenaten and his immediate successors, referring to Akhenaten himself as the enemy or that criminal in archival records. He was all but lost from history until the discovery during the 19th century, of the site of Akhenaten, the city he built for the Aten, at Amarna. Early excavations at Amarna by Flinders Petrie sparked interest in the enigmatic pharaoh, and a mummy found in the tomb KV 55, which was unearthed in 1907 in a dig led by Edward R. Ayrton, is likely that of Akhenaten. DNA analysis has determined that the man buried in KV 55 is the father of King Tutankhamun, but its identification as Akhenaten has been questioned. Modern interest in Akhenaten and his queen, Nefertiti, comes partly from his connection with Tutankhamun, partly from the unique style and high quality of the pictorial arts he patronized, and partly from ongoing interest in the religion he attempted to establish. Early reign as Amenhotep IV. The future Akhenaten was a younger son of Amenhotep III and Chief Queen Tai. The eldest son, Crown Prince Thutmose, was recognized as the heir of Amenhotep III, but he died relatively young, and the next in line for the throne was a prince named Amenhotep. There is much controversy around whether Amenhotep IV succeeded to the throne on the death of his father, Amenhotep III, or whether there was a co-regency, lasting as long as 12 years according to some Egyptologists. Current literature by Eric Klein, Nicholas Reeves, Peter Dorman and other scholars comes out strongly against the establishment of a long co-regency between the two rulers and in favor of either no co-regency or a brief one lasting 1 to 2 years, at the most. Other literature by Donald Redford, William Mernon, Alan Gardner and more recently by Lawrence Berman in 1998 contests the view of any co-regency whatsoever between Akhenaten and his father. In February 2014, Egyptian Ministry for Antiquities announced what it called conclusive evidence that Akhenaten shared power with his father for at least 8 years. The evidence came from the inscriptions found in the Luxor tomb of Vizier Amenhotep Hui. A team of Spanish archaeologists have been working at this tomb. Amenhotep IV was crowned in Thebes and there he started a building program. He decorated the southern entrance to the precincts of the Temple of Amun-Re with scenes of himself worshipping Re-Herakti. He soon decreed the construction of a temple dedicated to the Aten at the eastern Karnak. This temple of Amenhotep IV was called the Gempatan. The Aten is found in the estate of the Aten. The Gempatan consisted of a series of buildings, including a palace and a structure called the Hwt Benben, named after the Benben stone, which was dedicated to Queen Nefertiti. Other Aten temples constructed at Karnak during this time include the Rud Menu and the Tini Menu, which may have been constructed near the 9th pylon. During this time he did not repress the worship of Ammon, and the high priest of Ammon was still active in the 4th year of his reign. The king appears as Amenhotep IV in the tombs of some of the nobles in Thebes, Kawif, TT 192, Ramos, TT 55, and the tomb of Praefer, TT 188. In the tomb of Ramos, Amenhotep IV appears on the west wall in the traditional style, seated on a throne with Ramos appearing before the king. On the other side of the door Amenhotep IV and Nefertiti are shown in the window of appearance with the Aten depicted as the sun disk. In the Theban tomb of Praefer, Amenhotep IV and Nefertiti are seated on a throne with the sun disk depicted over the king and queen. One of the last known documents referring to Amenhotep IV are 2 copies of a letter from the steward of Memphis Apy, or Epi, to the pharaoh. The documents were found in Gurab and are dated to regnal year 5, 3rd month of the growing season, day 19. Name changed to Akhenaten, on day 13, month 8, in the 5th year of his reign. The king arrived at the site of the new city Akhenaten, now known as Amarna. A month before that Amenhotep IV had officially changed his name to Akhenaten. Amenhotep IV changed most of his 5-fold titulary in year 5 of his reign. The only name he kept was his praenomen or throne name of Nefer Keeper Yer. Religious policies. Some recent debate has focused on the extent to which Akhenaten forced his religious reforms on his people. Certainly, as time drew on, he revised the names of the Aten, and other religious language, to increasingly exclude references to other gods. At some point, also, he embarked on the wide-scale erasure of traditional gods' names, especially those of Ammon. Some of his court changed their names to remove them from the patronage of other gods and place them under that of Aten, or Ra, with whom Akhenaten equated the Aten. Yet, even at Amarna itself, some courtiers kept such names as Amos, child of the moon god, the owner of Tomb 3, and the sculptor's workshop where the famous Nefertiti bust, and other works of a royal portraiture, were found, is associated with an artist known to have been called Thutmose, child of Thoth. An overwhelmingly large number of faience amulets at Amarna also show that talismans of the household and childbirth gods Bes and Tauret, the Eye of Horus, and amulets of other traditional deities, were openly worn by its citizens. Indeed, a cache of royal jewelry found buried near the Amarna royal tombs, now in the National Museum of Scotland, includes a finger ring referring to Mut, the wife of Ammon. Such evidence suggests that though Akhenaten shifted funding away from traditional temples, his policies were fairly tolerant until some point, perhaps a particular event as yet unknown, toward the end of the reign. Following Akhenaten's death, change was gradual at first. Within a decade a comprehensive political, religious and artistic reformation began promoting a return of Egyptian life to the norms it had followed during his father's reign. Much of the art and building infrastructure created during Akhenaten's reign was defaced or destroyed in the period following his death, particularly during the reigns of Horemheb and the early 19th dynasty kings. Stone building blocks from Akhenaten's construction projects were later used as foundation stones for subsequent rulers' temples and tombs. Pharaoh and family depictions, styles of art that flourished during this short period, are markedly different from other Egyptian art. In some cases, representations are more naturalistic, especially in depictions of animals and plants, of commoners, and in a sense of action and movement, for both non-royal and royal people. However, depictions of members of the court, especially members of the royal family, are extremely stylized, with elongated heads, protruding stomachs, heavy hips, thin arms and legs, and exaggerated facial features. Significantly, and for the only time in the history of Egyptian royal art, Akhenaten's family are shown taking part in decidedly naturalistic activities, showing affection for each other, and being caught in mid-action. In traditional art, a pharaoh's divine nature was expressed by repose, even immobility. The depictions of action may correspond to the emphasis on the active, creative nurturing of the Aten emphasized in the Great Hymn to the Aten and elsewhere. Questions also remain whether the beauty of Nefertiti is portraiture or idealism. Nefertiti also appears, both beside the king and alone, or with her daughters, in actions usually reserved for a pharaoh, suggesting that she enjoyed unusual status for a queen. Early artistic representations of her tend to be indistinguishable from her husband's except by her regalia, but soon after the move to the new capital, Nefertiti begins to be depicted with features specific to her. Why representations of Akhenaten depict him in a bizarre, strikingly androgynous way, remains a vigorously debated question. Religious reasons have been suggested, such as to emulate the creative nature of the Aten, who is called in Amarna tomb texts, mother and father of all that is. Or, it has been suggested, Akhenaten's, and his family's, portraiture exaggerates his distinctive physical traits. Until Akhenaten's mummy is positively identified, such theories remain speculative. Some scholars do identify Mummy 61074, found in KV 55, an unfinished tomb in the Valley of the Kings, as Akhenaten's. If so, or if the KV 55 mummy is that of his close relative, Smenkhkare, its measurements tend to support the theory that Akhenaten's depictions exaggerate his actual appearance. Though the mummy consists only of disarticulated bones, the skull is long and has a prominent chin, and the limbs are light and long. In 2007, Zahi Hawass and a team of researchers made CT scan images of Mummy 61074. They have concluded that the elongated skull, cheekbones, cleft palate, and impacted wisdom tooth suggest that the mummy is the father of Tutankhamun, and thus is Akhenaten. Death, burial and succession. The last dated appearance of Akhenaten and the Amarna family is in the tomb of Meriara II, and dates from 2nd month, year 12 of his reign. After this the historical record is unclear, and only with the succession of Tutankhamun is somewhat clarified. In December 2012, it was announced that a year 1603 Akhet Day 15 inscription dated explicitly to Akhenaten's reign, which mentions, in the same breath, the presence of a living Queen Nefertiti, was found in a limestone quarry at Deir el-Bershah just north of Amarna. The text refers to a building project in Amarna, and establishes that Akhenaten and Nefertiti were still a royal couple just a year prior to Akhenaten's death. Akhenaten planned to relocate Egyptian burials on the east side of the Nile, sunrise, rather than on the west side, sunset, in the royal wadi in Akhenaten. His body was removed after the court returned to Thebes, and recent genetic tests have confirmed that the body found buried in tomb KV 55 was the father of Tutankhamun, and is therefore most probably Akhenaten. The tomb contained numerous Amarna-era objects including a royal funerary mask which had been deliberately destroyed. His sarcophagus was destroyed but has since been reconstructed and now sits outside in the Cairo Museum. Fragmentary ushabtas of Akhenaten from his original tomb in Amarna, now in the Brooklyn Museum. Similarly, although it is accepted that Akhenaten himself died in year 17 of his reign, the question of whether Smenkhkare became co-regent perhaps 2 or 3 years earlier or enjoyed a brief independent reign is unclear. If Smenkhkare outlived Akhenaten, and became sole pharaoh, he likely ruled Egypt for less than a year. The next successor was Nefertiti, a female pharaoh who reigned in Egypt for 2 years and 1 month. She was, in turn, probably succeeded by Tutankhaten, later, Tutankhamun, with the country being administered by the chief vizier, and future pharaoh, A. Tutankhamun was believed to be a younger brother of Smenkhare and a son of Akhenaten, and possibly Kia, although one scholar has suggested that Tutankhamun may have been a son of Smenkhare instead. DNA tests in 2010 indicated Tutankhamun was indeed the son of Akhenaten. It has been suggested that after the death of Akhenaten, Nefertiti reigned with the name of Nefertiti, but other scholars believe this female ruler was rather a Meriditen. The so-called co-regency stela, found in a tomb in Amarna, possibly shows his queen Nefertiti as his co-regent, ruling alongside him, but this is not certain as the names have been removed and recarved to show Akhenaten and Nefertiti. With Akhenaten's death, the Aten cult he had founded gradually fell out of favor. Tutankhaten changed his name to Tutankhamun in year 2 of his reign, 1332 BC, and abandoned the city of Akhenaten, which eventually fell into ruin. His successors A and Horemheb disassembled temples Akhenaten had built, including the temple at Thebes, using them as a source of easily available building materials and decorations for their own temples. Finally, Akhenaten, Nefertiti, Smenkhare, Tutankhamun, and A were excised from the official lists of pharaohs, which instead reported that Amenhotep III was immediately succeeded by Horemheb. This is thought to be part of an attempt by Horemheb to delete all trace of Tanism and the pharaohs associated with it from the historical record. Akhenaten's name never appeared on any of the king lists compiled by later pharaohs, and it was not until the late 19th century that his identity was rediscovered and the surviving traces of his reign were unearthed by archaeologists. The inscription of this document, which dates to Ramesside times, refers to Akhenaten himself as the enemy of Akhenaten, as Egyptians had fully rejected his revolution by this time in the crisis which it sparked.